This little street urchin tries to protect a millionaire's son from his cruel stepmother, but before the worst happens, something shocking unfolds. Please comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scream of pain sliced through the afternoon silence like a razor, echoing through the leafy streets of the wealthiest neighborhood in town. The small 4-year-old street urchin, who looked barely 2 due to her frail, skinny body and oversized eyes, huddled behind the luxury trash cans of the mansion where she usually scrounged for scraps. Her little hands trembled as she clutched a piece of moldy bread she'd found, but the terrifying sound coming from the house's kitchen made her forget the hunger that had gnawed at her for days. Through the crystal-clear window, she could see an elegant woman in her 40s with perfectly coiffed hair and expensive clothes, holding something small and white in her hands. The cruel stepmother poured a white powder into the bowl of oatmeal sitting on the marble countertop, stirring carefully with a silver spoon, while her cold eyes gleamed with disturbing satisfaction. The little urchin watched, paralyzed, not fully understanding what she was witnessing, but sensing deep down that something terrible was about to happen. On the other side of the kitchen, a 4-year-old boy in a wheelchair played innocently with his toys on the floor, oblivious to the danger approaching. His blonde hair shone under the golden afternoon light, and his angelic smile contrasted violently with the sinister expression of the woman preparing his meal with such macabre care. The small observer felt a pang in her heart when she saw the stepmother approach the boy with the bowl in her hands, speaking in a sweet, melodious voice that didn't match her intentions at all. The boy raised his arms cheerfully, trusting blindly in the woman who had cared for him for 2 years since his father had remarried. "It's snack time, sweetie," said the stepmother, with a fake smile plastered on her face as she crouched beside the wheelchair. "Mommy made it especially for you to grow big and strong." The little street urchin clutched the piece of bread to her chest, her heart beating so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Something inside her screamed that she needed to do something, that she couldn't just stand there watching while that terrible thing happened. When she saw the boy open his mouth to take the first spoonful, courage surged through her tiny, hungry body. Without thinking of the consequences, she ran from behind the trash cans and began banging desperately on the mansion's back door, shouting with her weak but determined little voice. "No! Don't eat it! Don't eat that!" she cried, her tears mingling with the dirt on her face as she pounded on the solid wood door with her tiny fists. The noise echoed through the silent kitchen, causing both the stepmother and the boy in the wheelchair to turn towards the door. The elegant woman's face transformed instantly, the mask of kindness disappearing to reveal an expression of pure, icy fury. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous, as she carefully placed the bowl on the table and headed towards the door. The little urchin continued banging and shouting even when she heard the footsteps approaching. She knew she was putting herself in danger, but something stronger than fear prevented her from running away. It was as if an invisible force was pushing her to protect that boy she didn't even know. When the door swung open abruptly, the cruel stepmother appeared like a menacing shadow, her cold eyes fixed on the dirty, ragged child who dared to interrupt her plans. For a moment they stared at each other in silence, wealth and poverty face to face on that doorstep. "What do you think you're doing here, you little intruder?" hissed the woman, reaching out with a quick, sure movement. The girl tried to recoil, but she wasn't fast enough. The stepmother's icy fingers grabbed her skinny arm with brutal force, dragging her onto the property while whispering icy threats in her ear. The door slammed shut, cutting off any possibility of escape. Inside the luxurious kitchen, the boy in the wheelchair watched the scene with wide eyes of confusion and fear, his bowl of oatmeal still untouched on the marble table. Something had changed forever that golden afternoon, and the little 4-year-old heroine had just entered a nightmare from which she might never escape. The mansion's basement was a place where sunlight never penetrated, an underground world of dampness and shadows that had become the little urchin's prison for the past 3 weeks. The stone walls constantly sweated, creating a stifling atmosphere that made her lungs burn with each difficult breath. The cruel stepmother had revealed herself to be a true master of calculated cruelty, keeping the child locked in that claustrophobic space during the day, but forcing her to come up to the kitchen every afternoon to witness the macabre rituals that repeated themselves punctually at 3 o'clock. "You will watch," the elegant woman had said on the first day, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the girl's skinny arm. "You will see what happens to children who meddle where they don't belong. And if you try to scream or warn anyone, it will be the last thing you do." Each afternoon became a renewed torment. The little girl was forced to hide behind the kitchen counter, watching helplessly as the stepmother meticulously prepared the poisoned meals for the boy in the wheelchair. The white powder was always added with the same surgical precision, dissolving completely in the warm milk or sweet oatmeal. The blond boy had begun to visibly waste away. His rosy cheeks lost their color, his bright eyes became dull and tired, and his cheerful play gave way to long periods of drowsiness and confusion. Even so, he continued to trust blindly in the woman he called Mommy, smiling weakly whenever she approached with food. "Why are you doing this?" whispered the little urchin one afternoon, as the stepmother dragged her back to the basement after another session of horror. The woman stopped on the wooden stairs and turned, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Because that useless brat is standing between me and a fortune that deserves to be mine. His father made millions investing in stocks on Wall Street. He has enough money to buy an entire city." The revelation hit the child like a punch to the stomach. The stepmother wasn't acting out of madness or anger, but out of pure greed. The boy in the wheelchair was just an obstacle to be removed from the path leading to the inheritance. "When he's gone," the woman continued in a cold voice, "I'll be the sole heir to all this wealth. The properties, the investments, even the bitcoins that my idiot husband collects as if they were expensive toys." The days dragged on in a terrifying routine. During the mornings, the little prisoner stayed alone in the damp basement, feeding only on the leftovers that the stepmother threw down the stairs as if she were feeding an animal. In the afternoon, she was forced to witness another dose of poison being administered to the innocent boy. The housekeeper, a 60-year-old woman with grey hair and hands calloused from work, began to show signs of unease. Possessing a keen intuition developed over 4 decades of caring for that family, she noticed things that others didn't. "Strange," she murmured to herself as she cleaned the kitchen. "That little girl who was always rummaging in the trash has disappeared completely, and the little one has been so listless lately." The housekeeper had witnessed the boy's growth since he was a baby, when the millionaire's first wife was still alive. She knew each of his expressions, each sound he made when he was happy or sad, and something definitely wasn't right. The millionaire, a 30-something man with matinee idol looks, who normally radiated confidence and determination, walked around the house like a tormented ghost. His dark hair, always perfectly combed, was now constantly disheveled by the nervous hands he kept running through it. "The doctors can't explain it," he said on the phone, his voice breaking slightly. "All the tests come back normal, but my son is getting weaker and weaker. It's like something is draining the life out of him." The stepmother always appeared at these moments, enveloping him in hugs that seemed affectionate, but were calculatedly manipulative. "Honey, you're worrying too much. Children go through phases. Soon he'll be running around again." During the 4th week of captivity, the little street urchin discovered a crack in the basement wall that allowed her to hear conversations from the floor above. It was through this crack that she heard the most terrifying conversation of her life. "How much longer?" asked a male voice she didn't recognize. 2 more weeks, maybe 3, replied the stepmother. "I need to be careful not to raise suspicion." After the boy is gone, it'll be the husband's turn. The child's blood ran cold in her veins. There was another person involved in the diabolical plan, and the millionaire was also in the crosshairs. "Is the will ready?" continued the male voice. "Perfectly forged. When it's all over, we'll split the assets as agreed. He has enough wealth to make us multi-millionaires." The girl pressed her ear even closer to the crack, trying to memorize every word. She needed to find a way to warn the boy's father, but how? She was locked in that stinking basement, and the stepmother constantly checked to see if she was still there. That night, a violent storm began to form on the horizon, bringing winds that made the mansion's windows shake in their frames. The sound of thunder echoed through the basement like the roars of furious monsters, but for the little prisoner, they represented perhaps the only opportunity for escape she would have. When the first bolt of lightning cut across the sky and the electricity flickered, she knew it was now or never. The fate of 2 lives depended on her courage, and even at just 4 years old, she understood that she couldn't fail. The storm intensified outside, and with it came the moment to risk everything for a chance to save those she didn't even really know, but who somehow had become her responsibility. The electricity flickered once more before going out completely, plunging the mansion into absolute darkness, a darkness the little street urchin hadn't experienced in weeks. The deafening sound of the rain masked any noise she might make, creating the perfect opportunity she had been waiting for so long. Her little hands trembled as she fumbled with the old lock on the basement door. The stepmother, confident in her subterranean prison, had become careless in recent days, and the old key didn't turn completely in the rusty lock. With a determination that defied her young age, the child managed to force the door until it gave way with a muffled creak. The wooden steps creaked dangerously under her bare feet as she climbed through the darkness, each movement calculated not to awaken the attention of the residents of the house. She knew she had only a few minutes before someone noticed her absence, or the power was restored by the emergency generators. The kitchen was immersed in shadows when she finally emerged from the basement, but she knew every corner of that environment after weeks of forced observation. Her eyes, accustomed to the perpetual darkness of captivity, could distinguish the shapes of the furniture and utensils that had become instruments of her daily torture. The hallway leading to the bedrooms seemed like an eternity in the darkness, and she advanced step by step, sticking to the walls to avoid tripping over the expensive furniture that decorated the mansion. The sound of her panting breath mixed with the noise of the storm, creating a symphony of terror that echoed in her childish mind. When she finally reached the door of the master bedroom, she hesitated for a moment. What if the millionaire didn't believe her? What if he thought she was just a street kid trying to steal something, but the image of the boy in the wheelchair, wasting away day after day, gave her the courage she needed to continue. Her knocks on the door were weak, almost imperceptible, but insistent. On the other side, she could hear confused movements, as if someone was waking up from a deep and troubled sleep. "Who's there?" came the millionaire's hoarse voice, clearly disoriented by the sudden darkness. "Please," she whispered, her little voice barely audible above the storm. "I need to talk to you. It's about your son." The door opened slowly, revealing the tall silhouette of the man holding an emergency flashlight. The faint light illuminated the girl's dirty, terrified face, and for a moment both were paralyzed by the sight of each other. "My God," he murmured, crouching down to her level. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "Your wife," she began with a trembling voice. "She's putting poison in the boy's food. I saw it. Every day at 3 o'clock. She wants him to be gone, so she can have all the money." The millionaire felt as if the world was spinning around him. The child's words echoed in his mind, connecting with all the vague suspicions he had tried to ignore over the past few weeks. The unexplained deterioration of his son's health, his wife's insistence on preparing all the meals personally, the medical tests that showed nothing concrete. "That's impossible," he murmured, but his voice lacked conviction. She loves my son. She takes care of him like he was. No, interrupted the girl with surprising firmness. She kept me locked in the basement so I could see everything. She said that after he's gone, it'll be your turn. There's another man helping her. At that moment, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway, and the stepmother's voice cut through the darkness like a sharp blade. Honey, is everything all right? I heard voices. Panic took over the child's face and she tried to run, but her bare feet slipped on the polished marble floor. The impact against the edge of the staircase was brutal, and she felt a searing pain shoot through her right leg as she collapsed to the floor with a muffled cry. The stepmother appeared with her own flashlight, and the expression of feigned surprise on her face quickly turned into controlled fury when she saw the girl lying on the floor. "What child is this?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. "Where did she come from?" The millionaire looked back and forth between his wife and the injured child, his mind struggling to process the devastating revelations he had just heard. The little street urchin tried to get up, but her leg was clearly fractured, and tears of pain streamed down her dirty cheeks. "She says you're poisoning my son," he said slowly, watching every micro-expression on his wife's face. The stepmother laughed with chilling naturalness. "Honey, you're listening to a clearly disturbed street kid. She's probably hungry and made up this absurd story to get food." "Then why was she inside our house?" he asked, the distrust growing in his voice. "She must have come in during the storm," the woman replied, crouching beside the injured girl with an expression of false compassion. "Poor thing, she's hurt. I'll take care of her." The child recoiled instinctively from the stepmother's touch, her big eyes conveying a terror that was impossible to fake. At that moment, the millionaire understood that everything the girl had said was true. "Don't let her touch me," pleaded the little one, reaching her skinny arms out towards the man. "Please, don't let her." The housekeeper appeared in the hallway, drawn by the noise, carrying a lit candle that illuminated the dramatic scene. When she saw the injured child on the floor, her maternal instinct flared immediately. "My God, what happened here?" she exclaimed, rushing to help the girl. The stepmother stood up quickly, blocking the housekeeper's path. "It's nothing much. Just an intruder who got hurt trying to run away." But the housekeeper had worked in that house long enough to recognize lies when she heard them. Her experienced eyes caught the genuine terror on the child's face and the palpable tension between her boss and his wife. "That's the girl who used to scavenge in our trash," she said slowly. "She disappeared weeks ago. Where has she been all this time?" The silence that followed was as thick as the air before an explosion. The stepmother looked from one face to another, quickly calculating her options as her mask of kindness began to crack around the edges. The little heroine, even injured and terrified, knew that this was the crucial moment. If she couldn't convince them now, she would never have another opportunity. With all the strength she could muster, she raised her little voice once more. "She keeps the poison in the kitchen cabinet, in the blue tin behind the sugar. And there's a man who comes here when you leave for work. They talk about the will and about splitting the inheritance." The millionaire's world collapsed completely at that instant, along with all the certainties he thought he had about his rebuilt life. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain hitting the windows as the millionaire slowly processed the devastating words of the injured child. His eyes turned to his wife, searching for any sign of innocence on her face, but finding only a mask that was beginning to fall apart. "Honey," the stepmother tried, her voice taking on a desperate tone, "you're not going to believe the fantasies of a traumatized child, are you? She clearly needs medical help. She's delirious." But the millionaire had already stood up, heading towards the kitchen with determined steps. The housekeeper followed him, carrying the injured girl in her maternal arms, while the stepmother walked behind them with increasingly nervous movements. In the kitchen, he opened the cabinet mentioned by the child, and, behind the sugar, exactly where she had indicated, he found a small blue tin that he had never seen before. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing a crystalline white powder that made his stomach churn with dread. "Can you explain this?" he asked, turning to face the woman with whom he had shared his bed for 2 years. The stepmother's composure finally broke completely. Her cold eyes gleamed with uncontrolled fury as she realized that her carefully crafted plan was collapsing. "That little pest ruined everything," she screamed, pointing to the girl in the housekeeper's arms. "Years of planning destroyed by a dirty, filthy child." The involuntary confession hit the millionaire like a lightning bolt. All the pieces of the puzzle fell into place in a terrifying way. Her insistence on personally taking care of her son's meals, her refusal to allow other people to feed the boy, the mysterious visits during his working hours. "Why?" he asked, his voice breaking with pain and betrayal. "He's just an innocent child." "Because he was standing between me and a multi-billion-dollar fortune," the stepmother exploded. "You think I married you for love? All this wealth, these stock investments, these properties, all of it should be mine." The housekeeper held the girl even tighter, her tears falling on the dirty hair of the courageous child. "My God, how long has she been doing this?" The poor boy. At that moment, a key turned in the lock of the front door, and a familiar figure appeared in the entrance to the kitchen. The family lawyer, a 50-year-old man whom the millionaire had considered a friend for over a decade, stopped abruptly when he saw the tense scene before him. "What's going on here?" he asked, but something in his eyes betrayed a knowledge he shouldn't have. The girl, even injured and exhausted, immediately recognized the voice she had heard through the crack in the basement. "It's him!" she cried, pointing with her skinny little arm. "He's the man who talks to her about splitting the money." The lawyer visibly paled, realizing that he had been discovered. For a moment he tried to maintain his professional composure, but the accusatory look from his longtime client destroyed any hope of denial. "How many documents did you forge?" asked the millionaire, his voice dripping with a coldness he had never shown before. "How many contracts did you manipulate to steal from me and my son?" The double betrayal was like a stab in the heart of the man who had built his fortune with honest work and careful investments. The two people he trusted most had conspired to destroy everything he loved. "She promised to split the inheritance," confessed the lawyer, his professional dignity collapsing. "Said it would be better for everyone if my son died," completed the millionaire, the reality of the situation finally crystallizing in his mind. The housekeeper, moved by a protective instinct that she had developed over decades of caring for that family, made a courageous decision. "I need to take this child to the hospital," she announced. "And you need to examine your son immediately, if they've been poisoning him for weeks." Panic took over the millionaire when he realized that it might be too late to save his boy. They rushed to the child's room, where they found him sleeping deeply, his breathing weak and irregular. "Call an ambulance!" he screamed, picking up his son in his arms. "Now!" The following hours turned into a nightmare of hospitals, medical tests, and devastating revelations. The doctors confirmed the presence of arsenic in the blood of both the boy and, surprisingly, the millionaire himself, who had been being poisoned more subtly through his anxiety medication. "If they had waited a few more weeks," explained the doctor, "the damage could have been irreversible. Fortunately, we were able to detect it in time to start detoxification treatment." While the two were being treated, the housekeeper remained beside the courageous girl who was undergoing surgery to correct the fracture in her leg. It was during the long wait that the most shocking revelation of all came to light. A nurse brought the results of the child's blood tests, along with an unexpected find found in her ragged belongings. A small hospital identification bracelet faded by time and dirt. "Sir," said the hesitant nurse, "there's something you need to know about this girl. The name on this bracelet, and the results of the DNA test we did as a standard procedure." The millionaire looked at the little bracelet in his hands, carefully wiping away the dirt until he could read the almost erased name. His heart stopped for a moment when he recognized the delicate handwriting of his first wife, the one who had passed away 5 years ago in circumstances that he had never fully questioned. "This is my daughter," he whispered, the tears finally finding their way down his cheeks. "My daughter who I thought I had lost forever." The story unfolded in painful layers. The first wife had not perished in an accident, but had been a victim of the same scheme that was now being repeated. Drugged and manipulated, she had been separated from her newborn baby and forced to live on the streets without memory, while everyone believed they were both dead. The courageous girl, who had risked everything to save a brother she didn't even know, was, in fact, his own older sister, instinctively fighting to protect the family that fate had tried to destroy. 6 months later, the mansion had become a true home for the first time in years. The boy in the wheelchair, completely recovered from the poisoning, played happily in the garden with his sister, who walked with a slight limp, but with a radiant smile that lit up the entire environment. The millionaire had completely restructured his businesses, allocating a significant portion of his fortune to help children living on the streets, ensuring that no other family went through what his had faced. His investments now had a greater purpose than just accumulating wealth. The faithful housekeeper had officially become the grandmother of the children, her maternal love finally recognized and valued as it deserved. And every night, before going to sleep, the two children hugged each other knowing that they would never be separated again. The little heroine had found not only a family, but also her own identity. And although the scars of the past remained, they now served as reminders of her extraordinary courage and the love that can flourish even in the darkest places. Love had conquered greed, truth had triumphed over lies, and a family shattered by evil had reunited through the sacrifice of a courageous child who proved that sometimes the smallest among us carry the bravest hearts. If you enjoyed this wonderful story, please comment and give it a rating from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important. And if you love beautiful stories, subscribe to my channel. I promise to make your day better with my videos.